mixed coyote. We just come from such different sets of circumstance. I'm up all night in the studios in Europe, early on your edge. You'll be brushing out a broodmare's tail while the sun is ascending, and I'll just be getting home with my reel-to-reel. There's no comprehending just how close to the bone and the skin and the eyes and the lips you can get, and still feel so alone and still feel related, like stations in some relay. You're not a hit and run driver, no, no, racing away. You just picked up a hitcher, a prisoner of the white lines on the freeway.
Hi everyone, and welcome to this episode of Peace Talks. This is the series where we catch up with the artists and bands that are coming to play for us at the Mars Bar for Music Spoken Here. And today I've got with me Pete Oxley, who is bringing his band Hejira up on Thursday. That's Thursday the 27th of June over to Worcester. So thanks for joining us today, Peter.
Hi Dave. You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
A very interesting character as well is Pete. So we're going to explore some of the aspects of Pete Oxley. Obviously a guitarist and who formed the band Hejira that's coming up. You also got some people might know you from the Oxley Mayer guitar project with Nicholas Mayer, and Time is of the Essence. Another project of yours with Ollie Weston on sax. So I think that's an organ quartet, isn't it?
That's correct. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So with Ollie on sax, who's also in Hejira. So
yeah,
a busy man. You also run the Spin Jazz Club in Oxford. We'll cover a little bit. I'm excited to hear a bit about that. Celebrating 25 years this year as well, isn't it? So interesting to hear about that. And also, if that wasn't enough, a bow maker as well. Of the musical kind, not the archery kind. So lots to explore there. It's really pleased to have you with us today. Let's start back in the beginning when it all kind of started, because I heard you're a bit of a George Formby fan with a ukulele when it all started. So you want to sort of maybe start from there and how that?
Yes, I suppose it is relevant because my family were classical musicians. And that's all I heard. My dad was a cathedral organist in Bury St Edmunds, and my mum was a violin player. So, and I was kind of into art. That was my thing. Although I sort of had to do music because of our family. We all did music. But I was kind of more drawn to art. And I went on a course at summer school when I was about 11, I think, to Whitby. And a kid had a ukulele banjo. And he played George Formby songs. And I think it was just the sound of the kind of, the jazz-esque progressions caught my ear. And then I got myself a ukulele and I learnt a whole bunch of George Formby songs. So that was the beginning of my sort of straying away from classical music and trying to not really understand the other kind of harmonies, but having an access to something other than classical music.
Right. Okay, because you went on to study jazz, didn't you, at Leeds College? If I'm correct. Yeah,
I did. I mean, I came to that slightly later than other people because as you said, I'm a bow maker. So I had done an apprenticeship for about 5 years in Bury St Edmunds because, as I said, my mum was a violin teacher, so she knew this guy. And my sort of interest in art had moved towards woodwork over the course of my school years. And because my whole family, including my brother and sister, were clearly it was just music. And my parents could see I could do something else. They were quite keen to steer me away from the precarious lifestyle of a musician.
Right, okay.
So they introduced me to this guy, this bow maker, and he took me on. I started working with him when I was 15 on Saturdays and then school holidays. And after about a year of him luring me and getting to me to already do more and more interesting parts, one day he said to me, right, when you finish your O levels, you'll start your apprenticeship with me, okay?
Oh,
And
right.
I said,
That's
yep, okay.
unexpected.
And that was it. That was the only job interview I've ever done in my life. And I was in. And so I did this apprenticeship. And I did that for that was 5 years. Meanwhile, I carried on playing, and I'd been playing the guitar by then, and as a teenager, I'd been playing in rock bands, and I had a reasonably serious rock band playing original music, very influenced by Genesis, early Genesis, and the whole kind
Okay,
of
yeah.
thing. And but I also had an ear for the jazz. So when I learned that there was the City of Leeds College of Jazz, a College of Music did a jazz course, which I think back then was still the only undergraduate course in the country. I went for it. I applied and I got a place. So I finished my apprenticeship, and then I went there at the age of 21, I think, and
Mhm.
spent 3 years there at the Leeds College of Music doing the jazz course.
Yeah. And still doing the bow making. So I think you sort of
Well, I
continued.
kind of dabbled a little bit. I had a little workshop up in my room, and
Right.
just earn a bit of money, doing a few rehairs and very basic repairs.
Hmm.
But when I finished the college, which I must admit I didn't particularly enjoy, I went back to Suffolk and did another year's work with my old boss on a much more kind of ad hoc basis, because when I had done my apprenticeship with him, I mean, it really was Victorian style. I had to
Right.
be at work at 8 o'clock in the morning, and if I was 5 minutes late, I'd have 15 minutes of my measly apprenticeship's wage docked. And so he was extremely disciplined. And then I went to music college, and suddenly I didn't have to get up at any time. So
Yeah.
I was a bit spoiled. So when I went back and he wanted me to work for him again, I said, yes, I'll do it, but on the condition that you give me the keys to the workshop, and I'll promise you my best 40 hours a week, but they'll be the hours of my
Your
choosing.
hours.
Yeah. And that worked out really well. So I had a very good year doing that. And in the meantime, or during that year, I would keep nipping over to Paris and to go busking. And I met some players over there, some musicians, and I was busking and playing kind of jazz-ish stuff. I mean, I came out of the music college really unable to play. And so I was playing sort of simple jazz songs with people over there and just having a good time, playing in the streets of Paris. And then this guy, one guy that I'd been busking with, wrote to me after I'd come back to England, and he said, "I've got a flat. I'm renting a flat. Come over and stay. And we can busk for as long as you want to stay for, basically." So I handed over my keys to my boss, the bowmaker. And I said, "I don't know when I'm coming back, so you better have the keys." Went over and I stayed with this guy, and after about a month, I thought, I've probably overstayed my welcome here now, and I should leave. So I was about to come back to England. Somehow I knew the weather was going to be fabulous that weekend. So I called a friend of mine from Leeds, actually, from that I
Mhm.
met at the college. And I said, "Do you fancy coming over and busking for the weekend? I'm about to come home on Sunday night." And he said, "Yeah." So on the Saturday, we were busking up at Montmartre,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
there was the guys that sketch you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Somebody had heard us playing and came up to us, and he said, "Hey guys, there's a restaurant just down the road, and I know the guitar player is sick, and they will need somebody tonight. Do you want me to introduce you to the patron, and maybe you'll have a gig tonight?" We said, "Yeah, sure." So we went down and met the guy at the restaurant, and the guy said, "Yes, come and play tonight." So it was, wow, we've got a gig. So we played in the restaurant, and at the end of the night, the patron came up to us and he said, "Can you guys come back tomorrow night?"
Oh,
And we just
wow.
looked at each other. Well, this was the night we were going to go home. We just looked at each other and went, "Yep,
Yeah,
sure."
of course.
So we did the gig the next night, and at the end of that, the patron came up to us and he said, "Can you guys come back here every night?" And we looked at each other and we went, "Yep." And that was it. So we had a
Brilliant.
gig. And to cut a long story short, I ended up living in Paris for 10 years as a result of that, as a result of not leaving that day.
Wow.
And whilst I was in Paris, after a while of getting gigs, so myself and this friend, we started getting gigs in little bars and restaurants around Paris, and stopped doing the busking. And we had gigs, five gigs in a weekend at that point.
Wow.
We do Friday night, Saturday afternoon, Saturday night, Sunday
Mm.
afternoon, Sunday night. And we were living off this, and it was just fun and fantastic. But then I met this Canadian guy was passing through Paris with his bass, a little tiny stick bass
Mhm.
and an amp. And we met him, and this guy was like absolutely streets ahead of us musically. But he was a lovely guy, and he somehow wanted to play with us. So we teamed up with this guy, and he was one of these people that just has the right words, you know. And he said something to me which made me say to myself, if I want to take music seriously, I've got to stop drinking on the gigs and start practicing. And so kind of from one day to the next, I did that. I stopped drinking on the gigs and I started practicing, which I'd never done in my life, really. Not like wanting to practice, but by then I wanted to do it. You know,
Right.
I wanted the music, and by then I'd heard Kind of Blue, which absurdly in 3 years at music college I never listened to.
Mhm.
And so I heard this seminal album, you know, and it was like, oh wow, yeah, I really want this. And so I tried to start accessing it, and I started in with I thought, well, what's the minimum I can do every day with no excuses whatsoever? I thought I must be able to do half an hour, which is ridiculous. I had no commitments whatsoever. You know, I was living on my own in this flat. So, right, half an hour a day. So I sort of figured out something to practice for half an hour. That flew by next day. So a couple of days later, I thought, well, an hour. Okay, an hour a day. And then by 2 weeks' time, I had a 4 hour a day routine, absolutely mapped out. You know, I had a graph book with all the days going vertically in the month and horizontally 8 half-hour aspects of music I had to cover and
A very
tick.
organized person.
I was very organized, and I did that. I was upset, you know, I got into that obsessive state, which I did for about probably 2 years really. I made sure I practiced minimum of 4 hours a day. It had to be that plus rehearsals and gigs. And this, you know, then my playing started to develop, and I started to play more seriously jazz kind of things, and got my first gig in an actual jazz club in Paris, which was really exciting, and formed my first little quartet, and that developed that. And then I ran into the Canadian guy again, who was
Mhm.
passing through from Vancouver. He was all the way from Vancouver, and he'd sort of heard of where came and heard me playing in this club. He was just passing, and there's Pete playing in a jazz club now, and we chatted, and he came and hung out with me, and about 6 months later, I was sort of ready to start touring with a band. And I said to Kerry, my Canadian friend, I said, would you fancy coming over? He said, yeah, that'd be great. So he came over from Vancouver to be in the band, and we toured. I put a tour together in the UK over about 12 dates, I think.
Mhm.
And again, to cut a long story short, he ended up doing, I think, about 22 tours with us.
Wow.
And we ended up making 2 albums with that band. And you know, I was by then I was writing
Yeah.
and writing.
What was that band called?
It was called the New Noakes Quartet
There you go.
for no particular reason.
Okay.
And then yeah, so we made 2 albums with that, and we toured, and I mean, we did some great things. Our highlight was playing at the Glasgow International Jazz Festival and opening for the Brecker Brothers.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a very exciting gig. And that lasted until about a year before I left Paris, I think. Or maybe it folded when I left Paris, can't quite remember. So I came back to the UK and started to meet musicians here. And a mutual friend said, you know, I'd moved to Oxford. A mutual friend said, "Oh, you should hook up with Mark Doffman, who's drummer, and
Mhm.
Raf Mizraki, bass player." And they told the mutual friend had told these guys to hook up with me. And it took some sort of 6 months before we did. But when we did, we got together and played as a trio and just got on really well, and said, we should find somewhere to play in Oxford, just once a week in
Yeah.
a bar. It doesn't matter if anybody comes, really. It's just play. So we walked up the high street, started there, and down a little alleyway, we found this pub with a room above it, which had just been refurbished, and they hadn't any plans for it. And
Okay.
we said, could we come here, you know, every Thursday night for 6 weeks and give it a try for 6 weeks. And the guy said, yeah, sure. So then we looked at the place. We thought, well, it's down an alleyway and upstairs, and really nobody is going to come unless we have a name to front it and make something of it. So we put together a 6-week program with a lot of good players that we knew of, starting with John Etheridge as our first guest, who I already knew. And John's son was at Balliol College at the time. So his son brought a load of students, which was great because students saw other students were there and it was cool to be there. And we had we rammed the place, and it was just a fantastic opening night. And of course, the next week, because we didn't have such a big name as John, it sort of went down to 50 people from the first opening gig of 100. And then we kind of, Mark and I sort of struggled to keep it going for 2 years, sort of having between 40 and 50 people every week. And we thought, should we keep going after 2 years? And then the next year, just somehow broke even. We were getting 60 people a week instead of 40 and 50. And it just reached that point where we could cover our costs.
Right.
And
I'm looking forward to that time.
Sorry?
I said I'm looking forward to that time myself. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I think we're getting there actually. I've been because I'm just over 2 years myself now, and it
right.
feels like as I was chatting with you before, it's it's sort of picking up towards those sort of numbers. So
that's it. You just got to not give up. And so we were then covering our costs, and then we were getting known, And after a few years, we were starting to get solicited from New York bands. And how do these people know about our little club? But they did, and we've regularly had some fantastic players like Jonathan Kreisberg. Do you know of him?
I'm not familiar. No.
Fantastic player, and he's been with he comes with his band, and very often he'll just do like the Pizza Express in London and the Spin, and that's it.
Oh, okay.
European tour, and then go golf around Europe.
Yeah.
And we've had the Impossible Gentleman was we've had a couple of years with Steve Rodby, from Pat Metheny's group, and Adam Nussbaum on drums. Yeah, amazing players like this. Had Tim Garland with who did he have? Jeff Ballard on drums.
Okay, right, yeah.
Complete A-listers in our little place, and so we got to 20 years old, and then the pandemic shut everything down. And during the pandemic, the venue itself actually ceased to be.
As a lot did, and since,
exactly,
unfortunately, as well,
So thereafter, we had to kind of scrabble about trying to find another venue, and we've actually we realize we've used 9 venues since the pandemic, trying to find the ideal place. In Oxford, and all in Oxford. But now we feel that we've got our home, and so that's the one, the Tap Social out in Botley, is our sort of number one venue, where we can get 125 in there.
Nice.
And which is really nice. And we've got a slightly smaller one, which is a different vibe in a different area of town, called the Summertown Wine Bar. Okay. But it's we have the whole place to ourselves, and we can still get 100 in there. It's got a small stage, and it's lovely. So those have become our 2 chosen places, and it continues to go really well.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to come down and check it out myself tomorrow on Wednesday, because you've got Tristan Banks and his quartet coming to play. So I was actually down at Tristan's club, The Verdict, on Friday, just gone.
Oh, wow.
Because Francesco Robert Castelli's band was down there with Francesco, and I've had both those bands. We had Tristan was on just before them, I think, Tristan came in April.
To your club.
So he came up April last year. Robert Castelli is the New York drummer, now lives in Barcelona. He came over in the March. Francesco Lacastro on guitar there, and then Francesco backfilled, because I had Hoop booked for May that year.
Oh yeah.
Paul Booth's 7-piece band put together. And he had to pull out because he got the Strictly Come Dancing celebrities tour, some professionals tour to play on
Yeah.
that. So we rescheduled him, and Francesco stepped in. So yeah, it's always good to, because I did the interview with Tristan back then as well. So it's always good to chat to other people that are running clubs as well and get
Yeah,
their take. So I'll be
absolutely.
along to the spin and see what that's all about on
See what
Wednesday.
you think. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, moving on to Hejira then, the band that's coming up on Thursday. So I yeah, there's quite a personal connection, because I know that was an album I think you mentioned in your bio that kind of you know, was one of those very influential in your sort of musical direction. And because I was having bass lessons. I was playing the bass from about 17. I was just playing by ear, and I was sort of into funk and sort of jazz funk and that sort of stuff. And played by ear for a couple of years, I suppose, and then thought I kind of was starting to listen to some more complex stuff, and thought I probably need to learn a little bit about theory and what I'm actually doing here, and
Yeah.
maybe a bit of writing. And the music shop, there was a music shop called Hammond's in Watford, long gone. There were a few music shops actually, so 3 or 4 in Watford when I was learning. That was early 90s. And the guy there said, "Oh, you want to get in touch with this guy, Colin? Colin Balsh was his name then. Now goes by the name of Colin Edwin, who's the bass player that went on to be work with Porcupine Tree with Steve Wilson. Just after, I think, around the time that I was taking lessons with him. But I used to go for lessons with him in his he had a room off his mum's house that he used to do lessons in, and I still have I dug out because I still got the book from there, and he'd always give me tips on what to do, and I'll hold out to the camera there, but I can see there we go.
Oh wow, yeah, Shadows and
Yeah,
Light.
go and listen to those. He said Shadows and Light,
Oh
Mingus,
wow.
One's Reckless Daughter, and Hejira.
Yeah.
So I did, yeah. Shadows and Light, I think, was the first one that I listened to, and then and I've got a copy of that on CD somewhere. I've just bought the well, actually, yeah, I think a couple of months ago I found a copy of, because I'm recollecting vinyl now as well,
Mm-hmm.
that I ended up selling when CDs came out. I wish I had.
Right.
So now
Yeah.
you rebought it on CD and then they're rebuying it again on vinyl. Yeah, so I've got a copy of Hejira, but I'm quite excited because I don't know if you saw Rhino, who are the catalogue for Warner, I think it is. They released on Friday a box set. So they've done a number of Joni Mitchell archive box sets, but there's a box set released on Friday that includes Hejira, it's Don Juan's Reckless Daughter, Shadows and Light, and Mingus.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a new vinyl box set with all new liner notes and that. So
Wow.
I've got my order in, and we'll be picking
Oh,
them up.
fantastic.
So yeah, it's when I saw that I think I saw it on social media that something was advertised that you know, this band Hejira were playing. I thought, oh, let's dive in. Got in touch. So yeah, sort of talk us through how that kind of happened then, and what that was all about.
Well, yeah, I had loved that music since music college, really. In Hejira was one of those records that I had it on cassette, and I played it to death, you know, listening to the lyrics and yeah, getting through my slightly miserable days at Leeds Music College. That was just one of the albums I had and loved. And at that time, I didn't even know who those guys were, who Jaco Pastorius was or Pat Metheny. It was the music that really captured me. And when I heard Shadows and Light, I think it was the same. Think I still didn't know who those guys were, but it was just so beautiful. You know, the sound is so well recorded, and Shadows and Light is one of those live albums that's you know, it kind of fizzes with electricity when you put it on, doesn't it? And you feel the vibe that something's going to happen, and it really does. And so, you know, these albums have just been with me over the decades. And then at the Spin, we've always, every year, we try and do something at Christmas, a sort of Christmas special, something a little bit unusual. And 2 Christmases ago, so that would be Christmas of 22, I just thought, oh, I fancy doing kind of doing some Joni Mitchell songs. And of course, Shadows and Light is the obvious one to do, being as we're all jazz musicians. And I I gradually put this band together. I say gradually because the first singer I called didn't really get what I wanted to do and wanted to kind of do other things as well. Kind of suggesting to me, "Oh, I think we should play some of the saxophone players' tunes." I said, "No, but that's a different gig. That's not
Yeah,
what I'm
yeah.
asking you to do. We'll do that another time." And then another one I called wanted to bring her partner, the bass player. She said, "Yeah, we go as a double act." I said, "Well, we've got a bass player, so forget about that."
Yeah.
The third one I called wanted to bring her whole band. So I said, "No, this is really not it." And then the original bass player who was going to do it, by then he got another gig because so much faffing about had been going on, and we hadn't quite nailed this down for sure. And he got another gig, and he said, "Oh, there's you should try Flo Moore. She's fantastic." And
Oh, right, yeah, yeah.
yeah, do you know her?
Yeah, she came up with Sam Leake's Looking Glass. She played for us in April.
Right.
Yeah,
And she's lovely. And you know, I'd
yeah.
done a couple of gigs with her, and I thought, yeah, that's a really good idea. And he's Andy, the bass player, said, "Oh yeah, there's a video of her playing in lockdown, playing Shadows and Light with a band, and the singer is Hattie Whitehead." And I thought, "Oh God, I bet that's going to be good," because I've known her dad Tim for
Yeah.
years. He played
Mhm.
at the Spit in the very first year, and we've done quite a lot of gigs together. And about 6 or 7 years ago, at a gig that Tim had that I was playing on, Tim said, "Oh, do you mind if my daughter comes and sits in on a couple of tunes?" And I thought, "No, of course I don't mind." And she came and sat in and sang one of her songs and a standard. I think she sang "The Nearness of You." And I remember being totally blown away by the way she sang. There was something unusual about it as well as
Mhm.
beautiful. It's just something really captivating. So when Andy said, "Oh, check out Flo Moore on this video," and Hattie is the singer, I thought, "Oh, I bet that's going to be good." I checked it out, and it was just like, wow, she is the person. Because
Yeah.
not only did she sing with this impeccable sound and intonation, kind of like Joni, she's also got this delivery like Joni. She's got this sort of poise and dignity, and there's no ego about her. There's no me,
Mm.
nothing. She's totally committed to the music and the song, and that was really striking in this video. And also she plays guitar with fantastic time. She's like metronomic with this, and somehow she can then at the same time sing with this floating phrasing, which is an incredible skill to do. So I called her up and I said, "I've got this gig, this one gig. Do you fancy doing it, doing Joni?" She said, "Oh, I'm busy that night." And then she called me back. She said, "I've been thinking about it. There's nothing I'd rather do than sing Joni all night."
Oh,
So
well.
I found a depth for what I was doing, and I've made
Brilliant.
myself free. So she came, and then I found other players that I knew, and part of the criteria was not only did they have to be great players, but they all had to love the music.
Yeah.
There was no point in doing it if they didn't all love the music. So I put this band together, a seven-piece band for this one gig, and we rehearsed in the afternoon. And because by then when I advertised it, it sold out, I think in a day. And so I thought, well, maybe we do another night, another show. But then I thought we better see how we get on. So we rehearsed in the afternoon, the whole set. Everybody had learnt their parts. I
Mhm.
didn't write any charts at that point. Everybody had learnt their parts, and it just went really well. So in between the rehearsal and the gig, I said, right, get your diaries out. Let's see when we can next do another gig. The next date where everybody was available was the 1st of March, 2023.
Right.
So we put that in the diary, and I went back. I said to our IT guys the next evening, "Can you advertise this gig and maybe tell all the people who are on the waiting list for the first one we're doing another date?" So he put that up for sale, and by 11 a.m. the next day, it had sold out again.
Oh, wow.
So so this point, I'm thinking maybe this has got legs. It's a project, I just hadn't planned that at all. And so I called up Peggy's Skylight in Nottingham. Do you know that venue?
Yeah, yeah.
Lovely venue, which I'd played with Nick Meyer, and I knew the venue, and I thought the guy might like it. You have to hustle him quite a lot to get a gig because it's a gig everybody wants. So and he just rebooked me and Nick. So I emailed him and I told him about it, thinking he might say, "Sounds interesting, but don't bother me for another 6 months, and maybe come in a year." But he wrote back within an hour and said, "This sounds amazing. Can you come on this date or this date or this date?"
Brilliant.
And one of them was just 2 days after our 1st of March gig. So we had 1st of March and the 3rd of March. And at this point, no, what also happened was that because I was so buoyed up by his response, I contacted this agent who'd been contacting me about other bands called Ina Weiserek. And I said to Ina, I know you're kind of busy already, but would you fancy this? And I described it. 2 days later, she emailed me back. She said, I've checked out Hattie online. She sounds incredible. And I love the idea of the project. Call me. So I called her up. And by the end of the conversation, she'd become our agent. And then incredibly, she started getting gigs without us having any promo material whatsoever.
Wow.
I think we had a bit of a phone film from that first gig we did. And that was it. There was nothing else. And she was starting to get gigs. So I thought, oh, wow, I'm going to take this seriously. So I rented a theatre, a nice black box theatre in Oxford. And we got an invited audience in and filmed and properly recorded it, multi-track recorded it. And that came out incredibly well. And and I edited these videos and put them up on YouTube. And that's when the thing took off. And we noticed that one of them in particular, the song Hejira, after the initial sort of thing that you get in YouTube, you put a song on and it's like, after a few days, wow, we've got to 1,000, then it starts to drop off. And sort of, I think it got to about 5,000 and it kind of steadied. Then a week later, it was suddenly, I don't know what happened, but it was getting between 1,000 and 1,500 views a day.
Wow.
Which for anything I've done was extraordinary. And it's on about 50,000 views now. And the other ones, they were getting notice. And so, the thing has just sort of taken off out of my control, really.
Fantastic. So obviously we've got yourself on guitar, and we've already talked about Hattie. Do you want to just go through the other members of the band that you've got coming up?
Yeah. So Ollie Weston, as you mentioned, who I play with in Times of the Essence, he played saxophones, tenor saxophone, soprano saxophone, and bass clarinet, which is a sound I'm really enjoying in the band, and I'm writing it more and more into the arrangements now. So as I said at the beginning, when we started, everybody just learned their parts. They sort of took an interpretation of their respective instruments from the Shadows and Light gig. But as the band has developed, I've started writing arrangements as such. There's still a lot of freedom for everybody, but to shape the things and make it sound our own, while still respecting very much the original vibe.
Right.
So I've never changed any of the melodies that Hattie sings, and done a little bit of reharmonization, but not very much. It's more kind of the orchestration of it all. And the bass clarinet is just a lovely instrument to have involved. It's great that Ollie plays that, and he plays it really well. So that's Ollie. Keyboards is Chris Eldred, who's a brilliant keyboard player, piano player, young guy who he's worked with Hattie in the past, and I think that's how I think Hattie recommended him. And then we have Dave Jones on bass, who's a brilliant bass player. I don't know if you've heard of Dave.
Yeah.
He's an incredible musician. He's also a massive fan of Jacko, which really helps.
It shows.
Yeah. But the nice thing is he's taken what I consider to be the Jacko lines that are actually part of the music now. If I when Dave plays those, I think, yeah, that's just right. If you weren't playing those, it'd be like you're not playing the part right.
Right.
But he's not by any means transcribing Jacko's lines and playing the whole thing. It's just some of these little melodic bits that Jacko put in, and there's so much to me, and I think a lot of listeners who know that music, people would miss it if they weren't there.
Right. Yeah.
I really like what Dave has taken from Jacko's original playing. So he's great. So he's playing both fretless and fretted basses. And then we have Rick Finley on drums. And I've known Rick for years, and Rick's a great drummer and incredible a guide to interpret and understand the music, because he's been a huge fan of Joni, you know, since he was a teenager as well. So I knew he'd be the right guy for the band, and so it's proved to be. And Mark Cecil on percussion, and you know, on the original Shadows and Light, Don Elias was playing either drums or percussion.
Right.
And when he was playing percussion, it was really mostly congas and some bongos. I like the colors of percussion, so it's a whole addition actually to the soundscape of the band. And so Mark is playing congas, but he's also playing, you know, shakers and all the things which just kind of add color and soundscape to the music. Have I missed anybody out? No, that's it.
I think that's it. Is Mark playing this gig, or is it?
Oh no, it's
Adam.
Adam.
I think Mark's normally in yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So Adam's been depping quite a bit actually. In fact, he's just on the last leg with us up north in Scotland in the Lake District. And Adam
Osmiansky for
yeah. He's describes himself initially as a drummer, but he's studied properly in Brazil, Brazilian percussion. And his use of hand drums is just fantastic. As you'll hear on the gig, there's one tune where we feature him just playing, I can never remember what it's called. It's something like Pandero. It was a bit like a tambourine with a goat skin and little bells, but not as jangly as a tambourine. And he does his solo on this, and it's like, how are you getting all those sounds out of this one little thing? It's just fantastic. Anyway, so yeah, it's a joy to have Adam depping in the band.
Yeah, I love the bands that we've had a few that have had percussionists. In fact, we had unexpectedly a Brazilian percussionist, Cal Mamberti, who came down with a Slinky Machine, a fusion band from the Southwest, and he happened to be over. They played with him a few times, but he's played with Stevie Wonder and Tanya Maria and all sorts. It adds a really nice dimension to the sound. We've had a few with the percussion in, so yeah, really looking forward to that. So it's been fantastic chatting with you, Pete. Thanks so much for your time today. Like I said, really interesting character, and great to hear some of those stories. And we'll get to see you again on Thursday at the Mars Bar.
Yes.
Hejira. Really looking forward to it. Safe trip down.
Likewise.
And we'll see you Thursday.
Yeah, lovely, Dave. Thanks very much for having me on.